Okay, so hey guys, welcome to my channel, which I call Study Medicine with Me. In this channel, we study various medical books, especially PDF. And today we're going to study Grey Anatomy for Student Third Edition, and we're going to study for straight 4 hours. So, so let's begin. Okay, so the topic that we are going to study today is head and neck. Head and neck is one of the most important topic that comes to anatomy, and it is important because it consists of one of the most important organ, that is brain, and there are various nerve innervations out there that comes and goes from the various part of head, neck, and this portion are especially very highly concentrated with the nervous systems. So this is very important to note. So today we're going to study head and neck. No, 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 no. Okay, we're going to study from the start, but first we will look at the topic that we're going to study. So this at first there's general descriptions about head. Okay, there's figures of oral cavities. Okay, and other anatomical defined. Okay, there's another figure. This is a figure showing some nerves. What is that nerve? This is mandible facial nerve, I guess it is. Facial nerves actually have three branches, so it is a figure of facial nerves, and this shows various muscles of the face. And right here it shows the okay bones that is found in the neck region, head and neck. Okay, this is compartment of okay. So okay, this is very good, well shown figure. I'm going to study specialized structures of the neck. Okay, functions, protections. Okay, head and neck skull important. So so skull. There's something about small given here. Okay, we're going to study all of it, and this is the about vertebra, I guess, mainly atlas, I guess. It is cervical vertebra. Seven. Okay, this is about cervical vertebra. There's hyoid bone. Okay, and soft palate given. Muscles are given. Okay, the face skeletal muscles. Okay, and this is again the conceptual diagram of what, of soft palate. Okay, and the relationship to other organs, head and neck. Okay, vertebral key features, vertebral level of C. Okay, CVI, cervical vertebra 3 to cervical. This is cervical vertebra. Okay, so okay. Cranial nerves, head and neck, head and neck. Triangles of neck. This is very important. These are very important for me. I was studying it today. Triangles of neck. And we have skulls. Okay, skull. What the original anatomy of the skull? Okay, we're going to study that as well. And we have lateral. Okay, we're going to study this head and neck. Mandible. So today we're going to study all the bones of the head and neck. Head, especially head. That includes skull, skull and mandible. Those are different things. All the parts of the brain we're going to study today. The cranial part. Okay. So we're going to study bones of the brain. So it is too much, and it is given in very good detail with figures, and I'm going to study all of them. We're going to study all this as well. What is the ultrasound scan of normal carotid bifurcation and internal carotid artery stenosis? Okay, internal carotid artery is an artery that supplies the brain. It gives various branches after coming towards the brain. So now this these are, I think these are the coverings of the brain. Meninges. At first we'll study bones and then we'll come to meninges. We're going to go through the bones in very brief, not that detail. So we're going to start the topic from the first. We already saw the main points of the today's topic. Now we're going to go through the actual topic. So this is actually the way in through by which we study. I study. At first, I look at the very important points. It is better if I get questions, past questions, so that I could get a knowledge how the questions are asked in the exam. But unfortunately, there's no question in this book, I guess. If it is, then it is at last. So, and I'm studying just a particular topic. So let's start. Conceptual overview, general description. The head and neck are anatomically complex areas of the body. Okay, head, major compartment. Head is composed of a series of compartments which is formed by bone and soft tissues. Okay, they are this cranial cavity, two ears, two orbits, two nasal cavities. Orbits are basically the part in which the eyeball lies. Orbits. Two nasal cavities. Okay, and oral cavity. Okay, the cranial cavity is the largest compartment and contains the brain and the associated membrane. Okay, it consists of meninges. Meninges are basically covering of the brain. Most of the ear apparatus on each side of the aorta within the bones forming the floor of the cranial cavity. The external parts of the ears and external lateral from the region. The two orbits. Okay, two orbits contain the eyes. They are, as I have told already, they are cone-shaped chambers immediately interfere with the anterior aspect of the cranial cavity. Okay, anterior aspect of the cranial cavity. So we'll be looking through the cranial cavity. At the apex of each cone is directed posterior medially. This is very important to note. The orbit is actually uh, actually uh, directed posterior medially. So it goes. The cone is actually like this. If we suppose this as left eye and this suppose this as an this as an right eye, then the orbit is actually directed this way, posterior medially. It goes posteriorly and medially. So orbit is directed posterior medially within the cranial cavity and ultimately reaches to the cranial cavity. Okay, the nasal cavity are the are the upper part of the respiratory tract. Are the upper part of the respiratory tract and has been and in between the orbit they have walls, floors, ceilings which are predominantly composed of bone and cartilage. The anterior opening of the nasal cavities are nares. The posterior opening of the cornea. Okay, the anterior opening of the nasal cavity is nares, kenosis, and the posterior opening is called cornea. Cornea are basically a collection of three bones. Posterior nasal cavity. Okay, continuous within the nasal cavity are air-filled extensive sinuses. There are sinuses within the brain. There are basically three sinuses present within the brain. We're not going to go through this in detail. Okay, just sort of account there's maxillary sinus showing the bones. Okay, let's study what is maxillary sinus. There's sinuses. Sinuses is basically, as the name suggests, sinus is actually a hollow cavity that is present within the bone. So there is a largest one is called maxillary sinus, and the inferior to the orbit. So orbit. So this is orbit. Inferior to it there is maxillary sinus. The oral cavity is inferior to the nasal cavities. Oral cavities are inferior to the nasal cavity, separate from them by hard and soft palate. Okay, there is presence of hard palate and soft palate, and above them there is presence of a nasal. Above the hard palate and soft palate, there is presence of a nasal cavity. Okay, the anterior opening of the oral cavity is the anterior opening of the oral cavity is oral. Okay, features of the posterior bone or canal, unlike the nearest and the cornea. Okay, not important. So this figure shows all about what we just studied. So this is orbit. It is directed posterior medially as this shows. There is presence of a nasal cavity right here, and this is oral cavity. This is oral fissure, and obviously this is nares. Nares are two spaces, exterior spaces of the nose, and posterior of the nasal cavity, there has been some conei. Conei is basically a bone, and these are the ears. Okay, so this is just a uh, conceptual diagram. This one is a real diagram, as we can see. This okay, sorry. So yes, this one is the orbit, and this one is a nose, this one is the oral cavity, and we cannot see cone, unfortunately. However, we can see the auditory canal right here. This is the auditory canal. Another anatomically defined regions. In addition to the major compartment of the head, two other anatomically defined regions, infratemporal fossa and pterygopalatine fossa of the head on each side, are areas of transition from one compartment of a head to another. Okay, the face and scalp are also anatomically defined areas of the head and are related to external surfaces. The infratemporal fossa is an area between the posterior aspect of the mandible. The infratemporal surface of an area is between the posterior surface, mandible, and the flat region of the bone. Thus, okay. In addition to the major component of the head, two other anatomically defined regions. Infratemporal fossa and pterygopatal. Okay. So infratemporal fossa and pterygopalatine fossa of the head. Sorry. Infratemporal fossa and pterygopalatine fossa of the head on each side of the area, and from one component to another. The face and scalp also are anatomically defined areas of the head and are related to external surface. Okay, infratemporal fossa is an area. Infratemporal is an area between the posterior aspect of the mandible and the flat region of the bone. Basically defines the infratemporal region of the area. So posterior aspect of the mandible. So what is posterior aspect of the mandible? This one is mandible. The figure shows the mandible. So this one is a mandible. So inferior aspect of the mandible. With the posterior aspect of the mandible and the flat region of the bone. Okay, infratemporal fossa is area between the posterior aspect of the mandible and flat region. Okay, I'm going to study this again. Other anatomically defined regions of the brain. So what were the previous anatomically defined regions? So head major compartments, the compartments which we discussed. So what are the other anatomically defined regions? In addition to the major compartment of the head, two other anatomically defined regions, temporal. So two other compartments are infratemporal fossa and pterygopalatine fossa of the head on each side of the infratemporal fossa and pterygopalatine infra. So there is a temporal bone within the skull. Infratemporal basically means the region which is below the temporal bone. So infratemporal, there might be a fossa which is the infratemporal fossa, which we'll be looking at very soon, and pterygopalatine fossa. Pterygoid bone and palatine bone. It must be in relation with this particular bones. So the fossa might be at there, so it is called pterygopalatine fossa. We'll be looking at it as well. So let's look at it. Infratemporal fossa. It is an area between the posterior aspect of the mandible. So it is actually present in posterior aspect of the mandible. We're not okay. It is obviously at the posterior, so this figure shows it. It is present in the posterior aspect of the mandible. Okay, and a flat region of the bone, and a flat region of the bone. Okay, which bone? Lateral palate of pterygoid process. Okay, just posterior to the upper jaw. So it is posterior to the upper jaw. So this one in this figure, this one is the upper jaw. It is posterior to the upper jaw, and similarly it is also between it is also posterior to the posterior aspect of ramus of the mandible. So ramus of the mandibles, we will be looking at the ramus of the mandibles in very soon. Okay. This fossa bounded by the bone and the soft tissues is conduct from one major cranial nerves. This fossa bounded by the bone and soft tissues is a okay, just posted to the upper jaw. This fossa is bounded by the bone. Okay. Just a minute, I'll be playing background music. I'll be some background music actually helps me to concentrate. Okay, just a minute, just a minute. So here you go. Background music. Just a little bit of background music and we'll be ready to go. So we always study about the infratemporal fossa. Infratemporal fossa, as we have discussed earlier, it is actually a space just below the mandible, ramus of the mandible, and it will also present posterior to the upper jaw. This fossa is bounded by bone and soft tissues. Okay, and is a conduct for one of the major cranial nerves. Okay, it is conduit means just a way for one major cranial nerves, and that is the mandibular nerve. Okay, the mandibular division of the trigeminal. It's the division of the trigeminal nerve. Okay, I thought it was facial nerve, but it's actually division of the trigeminal nerve. So okay, which passes between the cranial and the oral cavity. So mandibular nerve passes between the. So what we just found out that infratemporal fossa is actually present posterior to the lower jaw and upper jaw, and it actually consists of a V3 nerve, which is a mandibular part of trigeminal nerve, and yeah, that's it. Nothing more important in this topic. So pterygoid fossa. Now we're going to talk about another compartment, that is pterygoid fossa. On each side is the just fossa on the pterygoid fossa on each side is just posterior to the upper jaw. Okay, is posterior to upper jaw. So so let's see the figure first. This is pterygoid fossa, and yeah, there's a small space. Okay, there's a small. Okay, this is pterygoid fossa, and this one is very small space. I guess it is a pterygoid fossa. So it is present posterior to the upper jaw. It is below the skull. So let's see. It's a side just posterior to the upper jaw. Okay, it says yeah, it's posterior. So it is just one is upper jaw. Posterior to the small jaw, upper jaw. This small fossa communicates with the cranial cavity. Okay, it communicates with the cranial cavity. The infratemporal fossa. There are many spaces that it connects with. It actually connects to cranial cavity. Okay, infratemporal fossa, the same fossa that we discussed earlier, and the orbit. Okay, orbit. So orbit is basically the space in which the eye lies. The cranial cavity, the cavity in which brain lies, and infratemporal fossa that we just discussed earlier. It is actually present posterior to the lower jaw and upper jaw, and it consists of a V3 nerve, the nasal cavity and the oral cavity. Okay, oral bit, nasal cavity. So it has connection with various cavities. Okay, so what is the structure that is present within the pterygoid fossa? The major structure passing through the pterygoid fossa is maxillary nerve. Okay, maxillary nerve actually passes from the pterygoid fossa. Very important note. So this one is a very small space right here, and the maxillary nerve passes through the pterygoid fossa. I think the only thing that we need to understand in this case is that the maxillary nerve passes through the pterygoid fossa and the mandibular. No, sorry. Okay, maxillary nerve passes to the pterygoid fossa, and the mandibular nerve passes to the pterygoid fossa. Because this is one. So we should have idea about brief about this communication, but it is not that important. So it actually so pterygoid fossa right here communicates with oral cavity right here. It also communicates with the nasal cavity. It also communicates with the oral cavity. Sorry, this is orbit. So this orbit, this one is oral cavity, this one is nasal cavity, and it actually passes the maxillary nerve. So maxilla and mandible, the lowermost point, this is mandible. People often get confused at first. So this is mandible, and the upper one is called maxilla. Upper jaw is called maxilla. Oh, sorry. So this one is maxilla. This one is maxilla. So we studied about infratemporal fossa and pterygoid fossa, and the content it consists. And now let's go to the face. Okay, these are the muscles of the face. What are the muscles of the face? Which is not important, I guess, but yeah. The face is the anterior aspect. Okay, the face is the anterior aspect of the head and contains a unique group of muscles. Okay, obviously that moves the skin related to the underlying bone and control the anterior opening of the orbit and oval cavity. Orbit means the cavity in which eye is present, and oval cavity is as its name, other names of this, it consists of is his mouth basically. The scalp covers the superior, posterior, and lateral region of the head. Okay, superior, posterior, and lateral regions of the head. So, so anterior regions. Okay, basically actually consists of an anterior part of the brain. As we can see, this one is the anterior part of the brain. This is not much to be described, and it consists of oral cavities and the mouth. On sorry, orbital cavity and the mouth, and and scalp is the thing that connects to the connects the superior aspect and the posterior aspect. There are some, okay, orbicularis oculi is a muscle that surrounds the eye, and orbicularis oris is the muscle that surrounds the mouth. Oculi, orbicularis oculi. So this orbicularis is common in this both of form. Might be orbit. It might, this word might come from orbit, as we know that orbit is or as we know the orbit is circular in shape, and it actually surrounds the orbit actually surrounds the earth, isn't it? Yes. So this, in this figure we can see that this muscle is surrounding eye, so it's called orbicularis oculi might mean eye in some sense, and orbicularis oris means it is surrounding their mouth. So in that way we can just make connections. So let's study about the neck. Not that important. Neck extends from the head and over the shoulder, thorax. The superior mandible is along the inferior margin of the mandible. Okay, inferior mandible, it is up to the inferior boundary of the mandible feeds on the position. The inferior boundary of the neck extends from top of the sternum. Okay, it actually starts from top of the sternum along the clavicle. Okay, where's the, okay, it, so this one is also head along the clavicle and onto the adjacent acromion. So acromion process is basically the process of the scapula. If you don't know scapula, it is basically a bone that in which your arm is connected. This one is your arm's bone, which is called humerus, and this is scapula. Sorry, so this is scapula. This is scapula, and this one is acromion process. This scapula consists of various processes, and this one is acromion process of a scapula. So the neck ranges from the inferior part of the mandibles, from up to the top to the and towards the bottom. It consists of a sternum, top of the sternum, to the superior portion of the clavicle, up to the sternum. Okay, up to the acromion process of the scapula. Anterior inferior boundary of the neck extends from top of the sternum along with the clavicle and to the adjacent acromion. A bony position of scapula. Okay, posteriorly the inferior limit of the neck is less defined, but can be approximated by a line between the acromion and the spinous process of the vertebra, which is prominent and the the inferior border of the neck encloses the base of the neck. Okay, I just got that thing very clearly, so I don't need to study that. The neck has four major compartments, which are enclosed by an outer muscular fascial collar. The neck has four main compartments which are enclosed by outer musculofacial collar. Collar. Outermost. So we need to musculofacial collar. Okay, this blue structure right here is a outer musculofacial collar which encloses the neck regions. The vertebral compartment contains the cervical vertebrae and associated posterior muscles. Okay, there are three compartments. What are the compartments? The number one is vertebral compartment, which basically the name suggests that it consists of a vertebra, and the muscle associated with it. And there's something called as visceral compartment. It will all ultimately contain the thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, and thymus. Larynx and pharynx. Okay, the neck contains two spheroidal structure associated with the digestive and respiratory. Okay, we were at it consists of vertebral compartment, basal compartment, and the vascular compartment. Vascular compartment consists obviously. So I'm not looking at it and saying that the vascular compartment contains the arteries and veins. Basal compartment might contains the esophagus, like a simple gland, thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, thymus, and part of the respiratory tract and digestive tract. Okay, respiratory tract and digestive tract that goes through it. And the vascular compartment consists of one inside contains major blood vessels and the vagus nerves. Okay, so let's look at it. So, so okay. So this is on a visual compartment right here. What are the things that it compasses? It contains of a thymus gland right here. This one is thymus gland. This one is the respiratory tract, probably the larynx, and this one is the esophagus. Okay, this one is the arterial compartment. This one is the vascular compartment, which consists of a this one must be an internal jugular vein. This one is internal carotid artery, and this one is vagus nerve. I don't know which nerve is, but it is a nerve. And posteriorly, it consists of vertebra. This one is vertebra, and we can see various muscle which is it is associated with. So larynx and pharynx. So we are not going through the larynx and pharynx. Okay, now the important part comes skull. The many bones of the head collectively forms the skull. Okay, the skull is not formed by just a single bone, but it consists of many bones. Most of these bones are interconnected by sutures. Okay, they are interconnected by sutures which are immovable. So suture is basically type of joint which is immovable and made immovable, and it is actually made from the fibers connecting each other. So it is also known as fibrous bone. It is immovable. Okay. In the fetus and newborn, large membrane and unossified caps, okay, fontanelles within the long bone of the skull, particularly between the large flat bones that cover the top of the cranial cavity. So in in case of newborn, there is no bone, but it is called as fontanelle, and they are not properly organized. They are movable, I guess, and not that hard. So, one of the most interesting fact about the fontanelle is that we can say if the child is suffering from dehydration or not, of if he or she have dehydration or not, just by just looking at this dehydration, by just looking at the fontanelle, because in case of dehydrated person, their fontanelle is actually depressed. So there's depression of a fontanelle in case of child. Okay, the head to deform during the passage through the fontanelle between the head to deform. Okay. In the fetus, newborn in the fetus and newborn, the large membranous unossified gaps, fontanelles between the bones of the skull, particularly between large flat bones that cover the top of the cranial cavity, allow. Okay, what does it allow? Head to deform during its passage through the birth canal. Okay, so if it is movable, then the head will easily come out to the smaller birth canal, so there won't be any defect to the mother as well as child if the skulls are movable. So there is just no fibrous joint in between the child, and there is actual spaces within the skulls, that is called fontanelle. Okay, postnatal growth. Okay, postnatal growth. Okay, it also allows the postnatal growth. So most of the fontanelles grows during the first year of the life. Full ossification of thin connective tissue ligaments separation. Full ossification of the thin connective tissue ligaments separating the bones and suture lines begin the late 20s. Okay, this is very important. Full ossification actually occurs in the late 20s. Okay, so you might wonder what late 20s is. It is basically the year near to the 30. So in late 30 there is full ossifications. That is an interesting fact to note. There are only 3 pairs of synovial joint on each of the head. Okay, there is pairs of synovial joint as well. The last are temporomandibular joint. Temporomandibular joint. Okay, yeah, that is synovial joint. Between the lower jaw, mandible, and the temporal bone. Okay. The other two synovial joints are between the three tiny bones in the middle ear, malleus, incus, and stapes. Okay. So number one synovial joint that is present in the skull is between the temporal region of the brain and the mandible, and the three tiny bones, and other is between three tiny bones, that is malleus, incus, and stapes. Malleus, incus, and stapes. Synovial joint is present. So we can just try to identify the structure that is given in this figure. So this one is frontal bone. Okay, sorry. So this one is frontal bone. This one must be a parietal bone. Okay, this is temporal bone. Okay, this one. Okay, this one must be zygomatic bone. This is obviously a mandible. What is this? We'll be looking at it. Okay. So here we can see the sutures. This is sagittal sutures. You might know the sagittal plane. Sagittal suture is actually present along the sagittal plane, so it's called sagittal sutures. This is coronal sutures for the same reason. It's along the coronal plane, so it's called coronal sutures. This is lambdoid suture. Okay, lambdoid suture. It is because it is of a lambda shape. We can see it is of lambda shape. So we know the shape of the lambda. It is like this, as guess. So it is lambdoid sutures. This way we can remember the particular sutures of the brain. So let's see. Okay, from the so this plane also shows the sutures, sagittal sutures and the coronal sutures. Okay, we have cervical vertebra. The 7th cervical vertebra forms bony framework of the neck. Okay, cervical vertebra are characterized by small bodies. Okay, bifid spinous processes and transverse process that contains the foramen. Okay, foramen transversarium. Small bodies by feet, spinous process. There is spinous process, but it is by feet. I don't know what does that mean, but there is it is by feet. Transverse process contains the foramen transversarium. Okay, together foramen transversarium from the longitudinal passes on each side of the coronal vertebral column. Together foramen transversaria form a longitudinal passage on each side of the cervical vertebral column for blood vessels. I'm going to read it again. Together the foramen transversaria form the longitudinal passage of the side of the cervical vertebral column. So what is foramina transversarium? It is a space that is present between the body, this one is the body, and this one is a transverse process. The space in between it is called foramina transversaria. This space is a foramina transversaria. This one is this one is spinal process. This is the arch of the cervical vertebra, and the spinal process is actually a bifid structure in this case. Okay, lateral masses. Lateral mass, articular facet of the tens, anterior arch, posterior arch. Okay, this figure is showing how it is being articulated. Okay, I'm going. The typical transverse process of the cervical vertebra also has anterior and posterior tubercles. Okay, even the transverse process consists of tubercles. Okay, for muscle attachment, the anterior tubercle are derived from the same embryological event that gives rise to the ribs on thoracic regions. So anterior tubercle of the transverse process of the cervical vertebra is of the same origin of that of rib. Okay, embryological important. Occasional cervical ribs develops from the elements. Okay, particularly in association with the lower cervical. Particularly in association with the lower cervical vertebra. The upper two cervical vertebrae C1 and C2 are modified for moving the head. Also see chapter 2. Okay, I'm not going to see chapter 2. Probably it is atlas and axis. Atlas is actually, I guess it is S bone and no bone and S bone. There's something. Okay, I need to see that, but I'm not willing to see it. So we don't need that in that detail, but leave it. Let's study hyoid bone. The hyoid bone is a small U-shaped bone. Obviously, it is U-shaped. So let's see the position of the hyoid bone. So it is present right here at first. See the position. Let's see the figure of the hyoid bone. This is obviously a U-shaped bone. So let's look at the structure. This is greater horn right here, and this looks like a vampire's teeth, but this is a lesser horn. It consists of two horns. This one is a lesser horn, and this one is a greater horn. And the middle part is like it's called hyoid bone. It's basically hyoid bone. So hyoid bone is small U-shaped bone oriented in the horizontal plane, just superior to the larynx. Superior to the larynx. Is it superior to the larynx? Yes. Okay, it is. It might be. The body of the hyoid bone is anterior and forms the base of the U. Okay. The two arms of the U. Okay, there is greater horns and lesser horns. Hyoid bone does not articulate directly with any other skeletal elements in the head and neck. Okay. The hyoid bone is highly movable and strong bony anchor for a number of muscles and soft tissue structures in the head and neck. Significantly, it is at the interface between the three dynamic compartments. Okay, for the compartments. Superiorly, it is attached to the floor of the oral cavity. Inferiorly, it is attached to the larynx, and posteriorly, it is attached to the pharynx. So it has its attachment to the oral cavity. So where's the oral cavity in this figure? This one is oral cavity, and larynx and pharynx as well. So larynx and pharynx are both are the part of the larynx, and pharynx are the part of the respiratory tract, and the pharynx is generally present. Pharynx is present upward, and larynx is present downward. It is attached to all those points, probably by any muscles. So let's look at the soft palate. Soft passage and hard palate separates the nasal cavity along with the oral cavity. So soft palate is soft tissue like structure hinged to the back of the hard palate. Okay, hard palate is very important in this case. I think we just missed the hard palate now. Just a minute. Yeah, hard palate and soft palate. Soft palate is present. Suppose this is hard palate. Soft palate is the seeing like structure that is present beside the hard palate, posterior to the hard palate. It is elevated. So it is elevated and depressed by muscles. Okay, the soft palate and accessory structures can be easily seen through an open out. Yeah, muscles in the head. Okay, this one might be important. What are the muscles? We have already seen the muscles of the head that surrounded the orbital cavity and the oral cavity. So the general term that we use to define that a particular muscle was orbicularis. If it is surrounding the orbit, then it's called ocularis, and orbicularis ocularis. And if it is surrounding the oral cavity, then it's called orbicularis oralis. Oralis, yes. This, okay, so let's look at the muscle. The skeletal muscle of the head and neck can be grouped on the parts basis of functions. Okay, innervation and immunological derivations. The muscle groups in the head includes. So what are the muscle groups that are included in the head? The extraocular muscles. Okay, in the head there is presence of extraocular muscles. Move the eyeball and open the. So what is the function of extraocular muscle? It actually moves the eyeballs and open the eyelid. And muscle of the middle ear. Okay, at this movement of the middle ear bones. Middle ear bones basically includes malleus, incus, and stapes. And open the okay. Muscle of the facial. There is also a muscle for the facial expressions that moves the face. Muscle of mastication that helps it to move the jaw. Muscle of the soft palate. Muscle of the tongue. Okay, in the neck. So let's look at the neck. In the neck, the muscle includes the muscle of the pharynx. Okay, constricts the elevator pharynx, which helps in constriction and elevation of pharynx. Muscle of the larynx, the diamonds of the air pathway. Okay, initially help in vocal speech, I guess. Diamonds of the air pathway. Strap muscles, position the larynx and high. Every muscle has its role. Muscle of the outer cervical collar. Cervical collar. Okay, cervical collar. Move the head and upper limb. Posterior muscle in the muscle compartment of the neck. This is soft palate. This is cornea. This is oropharyngeal stimulus. This is nasopharynx. This is oropharynx. This is laryngopharynx. Okay. So let's look at it again. This is the nasal cavity, which consists of a soft palate below it. There is a cornea in posterior part of the nasal cavity, and there is something called as oral cavity right here, which consists of oropharyngeal isthmus to the backward, and there is something called as nasopharynx. Okay, this one is nasopharynx, and this one is the oropharynx. Basically the structure of the pharynx. And this is one is laryngopharynx. So below it there is a laryngopharynx. So let's look at the real structures. So this one is nasal cavity. It consists of cornea bone right here. This one is orbital cavity. Posterior to it, there must be oropharyngeal isthmus, which I'm not seeing it right here anywhere. No, there's tongue, there's higher point. So this is the higher point. It is obviously a U-shaped in this structure. This is not a diagrammatic form, proper diagrammatic form, I guess. So however it has to, okay. Levator, so it shows the muscles. Levator, palatine muscles. It is levator, palatine. We can break up this word to know the function of the muscle as well as name of the muscle. So palatine, what does it do? It elevates the palate. Okay. So levator, palatine. This one is palatine tonsil, palatopharyngeus muscle. So in this muscle name we just knew the function of the muscle, but here we can see we can use to identify the origin and insertion of the muscle. So palatopharyngeus muscle, it comes from palate and all to the and it attached to the pharynx. So it's called palatopharyngeus muscle. It is present just below the tongue. Probably is the tongue to get tongue to elevate. Palatal muscle, palatoglossus muscle. Okay, listen to the other regions. Thorax. The superior thoracic apparatus, thoracic, and let's open. Okay, other regions. Thorax. It has relations with other regions. We're not going to study that. Vertebral levels. Let's look at it in brief. Keep it the vertebral levels. Vertebral. So, cervical vertical 3 and cervical vertical 5 and 6. In the neck, the two important vertebral levels are between 3 and 4, approximately the superior border of the thyroid cartilage. Okay, and the larynx. Okay, thyroid cartilage and the larynx. It is the vertical, the C3. Okay, let's see. C3 and sorry, C3 and C4 lies posterior to the thyroid cartilage or the larynx. Okay, and whether major artery on each side of the neck. So there's major artery which is present in each side of the neck, bifurcates. Okay, so at this region C3 and C4, the internal carotid artery and the internal jugular artery bifurcate. So this C3 and C4 import is very important. And the other important vertebral level that we need to remember is C5 and C6, which marks the lower limit of the pharynx and larynx. Okay, pharynx and larynx, and the superior of the trachea and esophagus. Trachea and esophagus, an indication between the cricoid cartilage of the larynx and the, okay, this we need to know. This is very important term. So C3 and C4 and C6. Okay, so it actually separates the larynx from pharynx, I guess. Yes, pharynx from larynx, and it also separates larynx. Okay, sorry, larynx, and it also separates the digestive tract, that is esophagus, trachea and esophagus. Sorry, trachea. No. Superior limit of the trachea and esophagus. Okay, lower limit of the pharynx and larynx. In this figure, we can see. So this must be area. So we can say this is larynx, pharynx and larynx. Oh, leave it. I just understand that. There's nothing to understand. Yeah. So let's revise it again. In C3 and C4, in vertebral level C3 and C4, there is a is bifurcation of common carotid arteries and external carotid arteries, common carotid artery and external carotid arteries. Whereas in case of C vertebral cervical vertebra 4 and cervical vertebra 5, there is also upper limit. Okay, there is lower limit of pharynx and larynx, and the superior limit of the trachea and esophagus, which is basically a lower part of the digestive tract, and which is just present below the oral cavity, and it is towards more towards the distal side of the body than the trachea and the esophagus. No, than the larynx and the pharynx. So it consists of a inferior part of the pharynx and larynx, and the superior part of the trachea and esophagus. That's all. The internal carotid artery has no branches in the neck. Okay, and ascends to the skull, the muscle. Okay. It doesn't have any arteries, so we're going to study this arteries as well. And supply the eyeball and orbit, other region of the head and nucleus supply the external carotid artery. External carotid. Okay, external carotid artery are actually present medially rather than internal carotid arteries. Let's see the figure. So it is the external carotid artery within. So this one is external carotid artery. It is present right here. As I've already told, it is present medial, and it bifurcates to supply the lower part of the skulls. And internal carotid artery, on the other hand, goes upward, laterally and upward, supplying the various brain parts. This one is pharynx. Okay, the level is properly given right here. C3 and C5 label, in which we will see the bifurcations. So it is showing this bifurcation. This figure is showing. Okay, so this in this we can see the bifurcation. This is very important note. This point is very important note, and in this region we can see nothing, I guess. I think the esophagus. Okay, it is uppermost part of the esophagus. So esophagus is given right here. Okay, it is also uppermost part of trachea. So trachea, okay, this one is trachea, uppermost part is at C4 and C5 level of the vertebra. This one is vertebra, C4 and C5 vertebra. This one must be a C5 vertebra, I guess. C3 and C4 vertebra and C5 and 6 vertebra. Very important. Know these vertebras. Airways in the neck. Okay. No. Okay. Let's see the structures. I love seeing the structures. There is higher point. There is thyroid cartilage. Okay. This is one is higher. This one is thyroid cartilage. This is cricoid cartilage. This one cricoid cartilage. This is okay. Here we have thyroid gland. Inferior thyroid. So is okay. Inferior thyroid gland is just surrounding the trachea, I guess, and sternohyoid muscle, which is sternohyoid, as the name suggests, come from sternum and get attached to the hyoid point. So it gets its name from sternohyoid. So it gets its sternohyoid. Okay, this is omohyoid. What the hell there? Okay, no, sorry. Sterno, this one was a omohyoid bone. Sternohyoid is comes from sternum. Sternum is present medially. Okay, so this one is called sternum. So if a muscle comes from sternum and get attached to the hyoid, it's called sternohyoid point. This cricothyroid ligament, thyroid ligament, thyroid. Okay, thyroid gland. Cranial nerves, very important and very boring. I just found cranial nerve to be very boring. I can't just study it. Because in order to know the cranial nerve, we need to know the anatomy of the wall of the skull. Where does it pass from? Where does it go? What does it supply? Oh my god, that is very frustrating, damn it. I've struggled it. I've struggled very much with it. So we just study the cranial nerves. But before that, I think I need to take the break. So we're having 5 minutes break. So hey guys, I'm back. So where were we? We were at cranial nerve, and I've already told you that cranial nerve is very difficult for me. I find it very frustrating to remember all those information of the vertebral nerves. So let's study. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerve, as I have already told, and it is in pairs both sides. Okay, the defining features are that they exist cranial cavity to the foramen, nerves, and the defining feature is that they exit the cranial cavity through foramina or fissures. So obviously it is a nerve and it must reach to the base destination it is meant to reach. So there is various fissures around the skulls for it to pass so that it could supply the various visceras. So all the cranial nerves innervate structures in the head or neck. Okay. In addition, vagus nerves descends through the neck and into the thorax and abdomen where it innervates viscera. Okay, getting it? Vagus nerve is basically your longest nerve. It enters into the thorax, abdomen, and ultimately onto other viscera. So it has various long. It is very long, so long that it supplies even a viscera that is present within the abdominal cavity and the thoracic cavity. Parasympathetic fibers in the head are carried out to the brain as a part of cranial nerves. Parasympathetic fibers in the head are carried out of the brains are carried out of the brain as a part of cranial nerve. Okay, parasympathetic. So there is sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic is meant for the fear conditions, and parasympathetic is meant for the relaxing conditions. For example, if you are too much in fear, if you are in too much of troubles, or you are in too much of anxiety, or anxiety is at that time your brain stimulates the sympathetic nervous system in which your various viscera work accordingly in which it could tackle the problems that you're facing or fear that you're facing, whereas in case of parasympathetic systems, the body organs respond causally, because it is a basically a condition in which quasi condition it is activated in case of quasi conditions. Okay, parasympathetic fibers in the head are carried out of the brain as a part of cranial nerves. Okay, the oculomotor nerve, nerve 3, facial nerve. Okay, glossopharyngeal nerves. Okay, and the vagus nerves might act as a parasympathetic nervous systems. Okay, so let's see it again. Oculomotor nerve number 3, facial nerve number 7, glossopharyngeal nerve number 9, and vagus nerve number 10. The parasympathetic fibers in the oculomotor nerve number 3, the facial nerve, and the glossopharyngeal nerve destined for target tissues in the head leave these nerves and are distributed with a branch of trigeminal nerve. Tissue in the head leave the nerves. The vagus nerves leave the head and neck and deliver the parasympathetic fibers to the thoracic and abdominal viscera. Okay, let's look at this figure, and this is so bad. This is so bad. So at first there is oculomotor nerve, which is nerve 3. This is oculomotor nerve. This is trigeminal nerve. This one is trigeminal nerve. Okay. This one is facial nerve. This one is vagus nerve. What gland? What organ is this? It is gland. Which gland? I don't know which gland. Submandibular gland. Okay, no, this is not the submandibular. Salivary gland, patter gland. I think it is. Okay. Cranial nerves. There are 8 cervical nerves. Cervical nerves. There are altogether 8 cervical nerves. C1 to C7 emerges from the vertebral canal above the response. Okay. C1 to C7 emerges from the above their respective vertebra. Okay. C8 emerges between the C8, C7 and T1. There are altogether 7 cervical vertebrae. It is called C7. But the nerves are actually 18 numbers. Cervical nerves are actually 18 numbers. It is because it starts. Suppose this is C1 cervical vertebra 1. It starts from right here, and let's suppose this is C7, and it reaches up to here. Okay, so here we can see cervical. This one is cervical knob 1. This is cervical knob 2. This is cervical knob 7, and this is cervical knob 8. So there are altogether 7 cervical vertebra, but there are 7 cervical nerves. 31 pairs of nerves, vertebral nerves are there. The anterior rami of C1 to C4 from cervical plexus, anterior rami. The major branches from this plexus supply the strap muscles. So what is strap muscles? Okay, C1 and C4 vertebra from the cervical plexus. There is something called as brachial plexus below it, I guess, but C1 to C4 from the cervical plexus. Cervical plexus. Region, anterior thoracic wall and skin on the what function of the sponsor separation of the in the split passes. I don't need to need this head and neck. Okay, historic triangle of neck, which is in our course. Okay, let's see. And this is very given in less. So let's start the triangles of neck, and so two muscles, trapezius and sternocleidomastoid, that form a part of outer cervical collar divide the neck into anterior and posterior triangle of each. So what are the two important muscles? That is sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius muscles, and it separates the neck into anterior and posterior triangles on each side. Okay, in both sides. The boundaries of each anterior triangle are the anterior triangle. So it is those anterior triangles are given. The medial vertical line of neck. Okay, the inferior margin of the mandible will be looking at it, and the anterior margin of sternocleidomastoid muscle. Let's look at the figure. Okay, so what are the muscles that we can see? There must be a sternocleidomastoid muscle, which is this muscle. This is sternocleidomastoid muscle. Where's the trapezius muscle? Okay, this one is trapezius muscles, and these two muscles actually separate the neck into two regions: the anterior regions and the posterior regions. So this one is anterior region, and this right here, the portion is called posterior regions, and it is called posterior region because it is present posterior, obviously posterior to the sternocleidomastoid muscle. For the sternocleidomastoid, actually there are two anterior triangles and two posterior triangles, and that anterior triangle is actually. So what are boundaries of the anterior triangles? So we can see the boundaries of the anterior triangles by looking at this figure. For an instance, this sternocleidomastoid. Okay, so at first laterally there is a median border of a sternocleidomastoid muscle, and medially there is a line that so superiorly there is a inferior portion of the jaw or mandible, and to the median there is the imaginary medullary line. Okay, it was all about the boundaries of the anterior triangle, the median vertical line of the neck, the inferior margin of the mandible, and the anterior margin of the sternocleidomastoid muscles. Okay, the posterior triangle is bounded by what? The middle 1/3 of the clavicle, the anterior margin of the trapezius, the posterior margin of the sternocleidomastoid. The middle 1/3 of the clavicle, anterior margin of the trapezius. Okay, the posterior margin of the sternocleidomastoid. So this one right here by the green line is posterior triangle, and below it we can see the inferior, middle 2/3 of the clavicle. Here is clavicle, and anterior. So here is the anterior margin of a trapezius, and in there we can see the posterior margin of the sternocleidomastoid muscles. So these were all about the triangle of the neck. So it is important because there are various structures that passes from these structures. So major structure that passes between the head and thorax can be accessed through the anterior triangle. Okay, head and thorax is passed to the anterior triangle. The posterior triangle in part lies over the axillary inlet. and is associated with the sutures, nerves, and vessels that pass into in and out of the upper limb. So we went out to the regional anatomy of the skull. So this is skull. Skull has 22 bones. Okay, excluding ossicles of the ear, except from the mandible, which forms the lower jaw, and the bones of the skull are attached to each other by the sutures, are immobile and forms the cranium. Okay, skull has altogether 22 bones, excluding the ossicle of the ear, except for the mandible, which forms the lower jaw, and the bones of the skull are attached to each other by sutures, sutures, okay, and are immobile and form the cranium. The cranium is subdivided into upper domed part, calvaria, which converts the cranial cavity containing which covers the cranial cavity containing the brain. Okay, calvaria is the outermost part of the brain. Suppose this is the skull, then the uppermost part. This is skull. The uppermost part is called calvaria. This part is actually calvaria. This ball-like structure, when it is inverted, it will form ball-like structure. It is called calvaria, and it will it will it will cover the brain. So let's suppose this is brain. It will cover the brain. This consists of floor of the cranium and a base that consists of floor of the cavity and the lower, okay, a lower anterior part, the facial skeleton. As a part of facial skeleton. The bones forming the calvaria are mainly the paired temporal and palatal bones. The bones forming the calvaria are mainly paired temporal and palatal bones. Okay, it consists of a temporal bone and the palatal bones, not the frontal bones. The part of the unpaired frontal, sphenoid, and occipital bones, and the parts of it also consists of bones such as frontal bones, sphenoid bones, and occipital bones, but they are not unpaired. The bones forming the base of the cranium are mainly parts of the sphenoid bone, temporal bone, and occipital bones. Sphenoid bone, temporal bone, and occipital. The sphenoid bone and temporal bone are very important. They form the base of the skull. Okay. And occipital bones also plays an important role. The bones forming the facial skeleton are paired nasal bones. Okay, this nasal bone is palatine bone. There's lacrimal palatine bone, lacrimal bone, zygomatic bone, maxilla, and inferior nasal concave, and the unpaired vomer bone. So this one shows the anterior view. The anterior view of the skull includes the forehead. Okay, so superiorly, forehead. So this is forehead superiorly, and inferiorly there is nasal region. This is nasal region. Obviously, the part of the face, and below that there might be a jaws. Upper jaws and lower jaws. Lower jaw is called upper jaw is called maxilla, and the lower jaw is called mandible. So let's look at the structure that you get such view. I remember studying it. This is supraciliary arch, the part where the eyebrows lies. The so this part is actually called glabella in between two orbits. This one is frontal bone. This is nasion. Nasion is basically a small space that we can view right now. But okay. So glabella, piriform aperture. So what is piriform aperture? This aperture that is present between two nasal. Okay, this one is piriform aperture. Piriform aperture. I don't know what does that mean, but I just know that is part where the nose is attached to piriform aperture. Inferior nasal concave. Okay, concave is basically inferior. Is inferior, which can be shown. It is difficult to view externally. This is inferiorly present, so this presence of nasal concave. Concave actually helps in various ways. Concave actually helps to pass the air, I guess. No. Concave actually cools down the air. It has an importance, and what important it has is that there are basically three concaves that is present in the. If you cut the brain into coronal section, we can view these three type of concaves. Let's suppose this is a nasal cavity. So air passes through it. Okay, it moistens the air, I guess. Provides the warmth to it, I guess. It's a similar word. I don't know. I cannot recall it right now, but this is similar words. So this one, right, this one hole is what bone is this? Okay, nasal bone, is it nasal bone? No, it must be a maxilla. It's in maxilla and it has various process, I guess. Yes, it is here. And this process is called maxillary process of maxilla. This is temporal bone, I guess. No, this is okay, this is maxillary bone. This is mandibular bone. This is zygomatic bone. And zygomatic, it has maxillary process, I think. Okay. This brown colored process is called zygomatic frontal process. Zygomatic bone, infraorbital foramen is actually present just below the orbit, and it's called infraorbital foramen. This is nasal crest, okay, in between anterior nasal spine. Alveolar process, this one is alveolar process, okay. Oblique line is present in the okay, what do you call it? It's mandible, mandible. It has mental foramen, mental tubercle, mental protuberance, body of the mandible, okay, body of the mandible, mental foramen, angle of the mandible, and the end of the mandible. This is angle of the mandible, maxilla, okay, ramus of the mandible, ramus of the mandible, ramus of the mandible, okay, oblique line, oblique line. Forehead, frontal bone, okay, frontal bone, this one, let's suppose this is a brain, sorry, okay, let's suppose this is a brain, pardon my drawing. This one is frontal pole, this is occipital bone, this is parietal pole, this is temporal bone. See, temporal pole, even the bones are arranged in similar pattern. So there's frontal bone, which protects the frontal lobe, obviously, as the name suggests. The forehead consists of frontal bone, which also forms the superior part of the rim of each orbit. Just superior to the rim of the orbit, on each side there is superciliary arches. Okay, he's talking about this. These are more pronounced in men than in women. Between these arches is a small depression called glabella. So this depression is called glabella. Okay, sorry, I forgot to draw. This depression is called glabella. Clearly visible in the middle portion of the superior rim of the each orbit in the okay. Clearly visible in the middle part of the superior rim of the each orbit is a supraorbital foramen. Did you see the supraorbital foramen? I'm going to study this again this time. Clearly visible in the middle part of the superior rim of the each orbit is the superior orbital foramen, supraorbital notch. Superior rim of each orbit, there is superior orbit. Okay. So this notch is actually superior medial. Okay, supraorbital notch. Supraorbital foramen, supraorbital notch. Okay. Medially, the frontal bone projects inferiorly, forming a part of medial rim of the orbit. Laterally, the zygomatic process of the frontal bone projects inferiorly. Medially, the frontal bone projects inferiorly, forming a part of the medial rim of the orbit. Laterally, the zygomatic process of the frontal bone protects inferiorly, forming the upper lateral rim of the orbit. This process is articulated with the frontal process of the zygomatic bone. Zygomatic and nasal bones. The lower lateral branch of the orbit as well as zygomatic. Okay. Zygomatic and nasal bones. The lower lateral limb of the orbit as well as lateral part of the inferior limb of the orbit is formed by zygomatic bone. So we're going to look at the zygomatic one, lower lateral limb of the orbit. Lower lateral limb. Lower lateral means this one is zygomatic, so it forms the lower lateral limb of the orbit. Superiorly in the nasal region, paired nasal bones articulated with each other in the midline. Zygomatic bone. Superiorly in the nasal region, the paired nasal bones articulate with each other in the midline and with the frontal bone superiorly. Paired nasal bone articulates with each other. with the frontal bone superior. How many bones are there in skull? There are altogether 22 bones. How? How? With okay, 6 bones are from the ear bones, ear ossicles. There are 2 frontal bones, 6 to 8. There's there's one zygomatic. There's 2 zygomatic 10. There's okay, frontal bone. Sorry, let's start it again. So there are 6 ear ossicles, two frontal bone, okay, 2 parietal bone, 2 temporal bone, 2 occipital bone. How much is it? Okay, there's altogether 14 bones we have. Now let's consider 2 zygomatic bone, 2 maxillary bone, 2 mandible. So how much is it? So 1, 2, okay, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now we are missing 2 bone. What is it? Boma? Yes, 2 bomas. I don't know what is boma, but yes, there's 2 of it. Also, there's altogether 22 bones. So we're studying about zygomatic bone. Zygomatic forms the lower lateral part of the orbit. Superiorly in the nasal region, the paired nasal bones articulate with each other in the midline with the frontal bone superior. The center of the frontonasal sutures forms the articulation of the nasal bones, and frontal bone is nasation. Center of the frontonasal suture formed by the articulation of nasal bones and the frontal bone of the nasation. Each nasal bones articulates with the frontal process of the maxilla. Inferiorly, the piriform aperture is the largest opening of the nasal region in the inferior. Okay. Inferiorly, the piriform aperture is the largest opening in the nasal region, and anterior opening of the nasal cavity is bounded superiorly by the nasal bones and laterally by the inferiorly by the extramaxilla. I don't know. Okay, this we are studying about nasal bone. I totally get confused with it with zygomatic one. It is part of the nasal bones. Okay. Let's study it again. Superiorly in the nasal region, it is paired with the nasal bones articulate with each other in the midline. Okay, it is articulate with each other in the midline, and with the frontal and with the frontal bone, there's a frontal bone superior. Okay, the center of the frontonasal sutures formed by the articulation of nasal. The center of the frontonasal suture is formed by the articulation of nasal bones, and the frontal bone is the nasation. Articulation of a nasal bone and the frontal bone is called nasation. Okay, nasation. Okay, it is found by the articulation of a particular bone which is called nasation. Nasation is right here. So this is nasal bone. Nasal bone is found by articulation of a 2 nasal bone. This one is a midline. This one is a nasal bone. Okay, this one is a nasal bone. Nasal bone. Okay, frontal and nasation. Nasal crest visible through the piriform aperture on the fused nasal crest. Okay, so let's leave it. Maxilla. The part of the face between the orbit and the upper teeth. Part of the face between the orbit, okay, and the upper teeth of each upper jaw is formed by parietal maxilla. Superiorly, each maxilla contributes to the inferior and medial rims of the orbit. Laterally, zygomatic position of each maxilla articulates with the zygomatic bone, and medially, the frontal position of each maxilla articulates with the frontal bone. I'm not getting it. I think I need a break. It is almost 50 minutes since I've taken break. So I'm back. Took a little very dark. So let's study mandible. The lower mandible is the most inferior structure in the anterior of the skull. It consists of body of the mandible, okay, ramus of the mandible, angle of the mandible as well. Yes, angle of the mandible, and the base of the mandible. The lower part is the base of the mandible. The upper part is the alveolar part of the mandible. Alveolar part is basically the part where there is a teeth. Okay, alveolar part is teeth. The alveolar part of the mandible contains teeth and is resolved when the teeth is removed. The base of the mandible has a midline swelling. Okay, midline, which is called mental protuberance. Where is mental protuberance? Let's see the midline. Okay, between the midline axis considered protuberance, which is as mental protuberance. Okay, this is mental protuberance. This is a mental protuberance, and there's also starting pronounced the bombs, which is called mental protuberance, and the base point of foramen is visible halfway between the upper. So what is meant of foramen is visible halfway between the upper part of the alveolar part of the mandible and the lower part of the base of the mandible. Upper part of the mandible, lower of the mandible. Is okay. Continuing past this foramen is the oblique line passing from the front of the ramus into the body of the mandible. Front of the ramus, it is like a structure that passes from the front of the ramus to the body of the mandible. The oblique line is put attachment of the muscle that repairs the lower lip. Okay, lateral view. The lateral view of the skull consists of the lateral wall of the cranium, which includes the lateral portion of the calvaria. Lateral view consists of the lateral wall of the cranium, which includes the lateral portion of the calvaria. Calvaria, as we have already talked, is this, suppose this is the brain, and so the calvaria is the part which protects the uppermost part of the brain. It is that particular point is called calvaria. So in this figure, this is the calvaria, this is calvaria. If it in body, it acts as a cup, it acts as a so, and the facial skeleton and the half okay. So let's see, sphenoid sutures, squamous parietal temple bone, parietal sutures. There's always a suture. There's squamous suture right here. This is temple bone. This is the parietal bone, and this squamous suture right here. And sphenoid suture. Where is sphenoid suture? This is spheno and squamous suture. Sphenoid suture. This is sphenoid. Where is sphenoid suture? This is sphenoid sutures. Coronal sutures, yes, and pterion, vegetarian. This particular point is called pterion. This particular point is called pterion. Fundamental. This is frontal point. Where's the greater wing? This is the greater wing. This is greater wing. This one, what is zygomatic? This one zygomatic message. What is the nasal one? This one is nasal one. This is very important. And this is we have already talked about lacrimal that is present right here. Lacrimal was actually lacrimal. There is, I actually have a special organ which is for the lacrimation. That is present towards the middle side. So it is, so the lacrimal bone is actually present to the middle side. So lacrimal bone is present towards the middle side. Lateral portion of the calvaria. Coronal sutures, lamboid sutures. Beta wing have a spinal point, spinal pedal sutures, spinal pedal. Okay, we already talk about the sutures in that particular point. So let's not talk about the mandible. We have already talked about the mandible. We are going to the mandible. Mandible is basically internal portion mandible. So mandible. Okay, we need to show the figures. This is occipital bone. This is pedal bone. This is pedal bone. Okay, this is sutural bone. This one is sutural bone. Obviously, this is sagittal sutures as we have already talked. Coronal suture is not invisible because coronal suture is in front. This one's pedal bone. This one's a pedal bone as well. This is squamous part of the occipital bone. Squamous part of the occipital bone. This is lamboid suture as we have already told. Lambda. It is lambda shape, and this suture is actually called lambdoid suture. This suture, even this suture is also called lambdoid sutures. And this part is very important to understand. There's two protuberance. There's external occipital protuberance, which is towards the superior part. This is external occipital protuberance, and below it there is inferior nuchal line. Inferior nuchal line. This one is nuchal line. Inferior nuchal line, and this external occipital crest as well. External occipital crest right here, which is just present right here. Inferior nuchal line is present right here. External occipital crest is right here. So the difference between protuberance and crest. Crest is actually a deeper structure, whereas the protuberance is the elevated structure. So the external occipital protuberance is right here, and external occipital crest is right here, which is the deeper structure right here. Below the external occipital protuberance is presence of a nuchal line. Nuchal line is also present of a measured process right here in the presence. Superior nuchal line. This presence of superior nuchal line. This one is superior. There are two types of nuchal line. This superior nuchal line and the inferior nuchal line. They also present of a external occipital protuberance. The external occipital protuberance is right here. This one is super review. There's nothing new in it. Okay, this figure, I should study this figure, and I will study it again. Cranial cavity. Okay. Let's see this. The external surface is called scalp. Okay, scalp is covers a lot of surface. It consists of hair cells, and below it there is presence of a okay. There's presence of a bone, and this dura matter, which is actually covering, which is one of the meninges, one of the layer of the meninges. This is dura matter. Dura matter actually consists of two layers, occipital layers and the visceral layer. Actually, yes, occipital. So it is not shown in this figure, but there is, and this is suture right here. This is suture. This must be a portion of a sagittal suture, or it might be a portion of a coronal suture. I don't know. Okay, but it is a suture. Anterior part and posterior part. Superior view, inferior view, bregma. Okay, bregma you will talk about. This is junction between two occipital, two junction. What is bregma? The junction of the sagittal and coronal suture is called bregma. Okay, okay, you're getting it. Junction and the suture is lambda. The sagittal suture and the lambda suture is lambda. Lambda suture is lambda. Lambda suture is lambda. Coronal suture. So suppose this is a brain. This is sagittal suture and this is coronal suture. This particular point is called bregma, and suppose this is lambdoid suture, then this portion is called lambda. Calva. Skull cap, we will study this. The main features of the anterior part of the base of the skull are teeth and the hard palate. Let's see. The main features of the anterior part of the base of the skull are teeth and hard palate. Okay. The teeth project from the alveolar process. Teeth project from the alveolar process of the two maxilla. These processes are together arranged in U-shaped. U-shaped alveolar arch that produces the hard palate. The main features of the anterior part of the base of the skull are teeth and the hard palate. Teeth and the hard palate, obviously. The teeth projects from the alveolar process of the two maxilla. Together. U-shaped alveolus arch that borders the hard palate on three sides. Okay, the hard palate is composed of a palatine processes of each maxilla. Okay, anteriorly there is horizontal plates and palatine bone rests posteriorly. Palatine bone is present posteriorly. Anteriorly there is horizontal plates. Okay, the paired palatine process of each maxilla meet in the midline of the intermaxillary sutures. Each maxilla meet in the midline at the intermaxillary suture. Intermaxillary sutures. Sorry, intermaxillary sutures. So for this we need to see the figure. What is the figure? Yes. So what is? So let's talk about the hard palate. So this one right here is called hard palate. There is of incisive foramen, incisive fossa. This one is incisor. The fossa that's below it is called incisive fossa. Okay. Okay. This alveolar. This one is alveolar arches, where the teeth is present. This one is alveolar arches. What are the structure that we can see? This is the line where the two hard palates meet up. So let's study about the hard palate. Hard palate is composed of a palatine processes of each maxilla. Maxilla, hard palatine process of each maxilla. Where is the palatine process? I think this is the palatine process, I guess. It's nothing is given right here for that. Palatine process of each maxilla. Where's the maxilla? Hard palatine bone. Hard palate is okay. Sorry, this is soft palate, I guess. No. Okay, what is this? What is this structure? This is lesser pattern, greater pattern foramen and lesser pattern foramen. Foramen is basically a space. So this is greater pattern foramen. This is lesser pattern foramen. And what is this? This is a posterior nasal spine. Posterior nasal spine. Spine. Pyramidal process of the pattern. Pyramidal process of the pattern one. Posterior nasal aperture. Corner. Okay, this we studied later on. Incisive fossa, we all talk about incisive fossa. What are the okay? Incisive fossa is the entire midline immediately posterior to the teeth of the wall which contains incisive foramen. Okay, it's considered incisive foramen. The opening of the incisive canals which are passages between the hard palate and the nasal cavity. Okay, it is a passage between the hard cavity and the nasal cavity. What does it contains? The greater pattern foramen near the inside which leads to greater pattern canals. Thus posterior to the greater pattern foramen. Thus posterior to greater pattern foramina. The lesser pattern foramina in the pyramidal process. In the pyramidal process of each pattern bone, which leads to the lesser pattern canals. The midline pointed projection. The midline pointed projection posterior. Okay. Greater pattern foramina near the posterior lateral of the hard palate on each side, which leads to the greater pattern canals. Greater pattern canals. The incisive fossa is the anterior line immediately over the teeth of which consume incisive foramina. Okay. Anterior half vomer bone. Anterior the small vomer is in the middle part. The middle part of the base of the skull complex, forming anterior half and vomer and spine. Anterior forming the anterior half. So middle part is further is divided into anterior half and the posterior half. Anterior half actually consists of vomer bone and the spine bones, whereas the posterior half consists of occipital bone and the peri-temporal bone. So again, I'm repeating this. The middle part of the inferior part of the skull is further divided into anterior part and the posterior part. Anterior part actually consists of vomer bone and the spinal bone, whereas the posterior part consists of occipital bone and the peri-temporal bone. Occipital bone. Let's see. Spinal vomer bone is which one is vomer bone? I need to understand what is vomer bone, and the spinal bone as well. So middle of the skull consists of a sphenoidal bone and the vomer bone. Where is vomer? I'm not getting the vomer bone. I think I just got the look of the. So okay, here is it. Vomer bone. So this pink in structure color is called vomer bone. So middle part consists of a vomer bone and the spinal bone. I guess this is the spinal bone. I guess, and it consists of various parts. Let's see. Body of the sphenoid. Okay, this obviously this yellow color structure is called spinal bone. It consists of a body of the sphenoid. Okay. And what is this process? This process is a lateral plate of pterygoid. It consists of two plates, lateral plate and the middle plate of pterygoid. Okay, it consists of two plates, and what is this structure? Because the sphenoid bone also consists of wings. This is wings of a sphenoid. This is wings of the sphenoid, wings of the sphenoid. This is lateral, this is middle plate, this is lateral plate. This is middle plate, this is lateral plate. Let's talk about the boma. What are the parts of the boma? Okay, this one is boma. There is no part shown right here except this conas. Yeah, except the conas. So one is stuff that is visible is cona, I guess, of boma. There was anteriorly the small boma is in the midline. Okay, obviously it was in the midline, resting on the sphenoid bone. Okay, it is tested on the sphenoid bone. It contributes to the formation of a bony nasal septum separating the two corona. Nasal septum that separates the two corona. Okay, sphenoid is the most important bone. Okay, most of the anterior part of the middle. So inferior midline part, middle part is mostly composed of a sphenoid bone. Obviously, as we saw various parts of the okay, greater and lesser. So we saw the wings of the sphenoid, but we didn't saw the lesser and greater wings. So what are the lesser and greater wings? Let's see. So with lesser and greater wings. So this one is greater wings. This one is greater wings. What is the lesser wings then? Where is this lesser wing? This one is greater wing. Where is the lesser wing? I'm not getting the lesser wing. Okay. Body. That's it is already 2 hours. I think I need to end the session. So it is already 2 hours, and I think I need to end the session. Thank you for being with me.